Welcome to the Global Home Business Pro Team Training Call with today's special guest, Russ DeVan. Russ joins us today to talk about the 3 greatest challenges to success in network marketing. Russ's insights into why people struggle in this business come from more than 30 years of both failures and remarkable success. In addition to being a successful network marketer and sought-after communicator, Russ has been a friend and mentor to our co-founder Cliff Walker for more than 17 years. So get ready to take some good notes now, because the information that Russ will share with you on this call today will not only transform the way you look at network marketing, but also help you create an effective plan of action for everyone in your sales team to follow and succeed with. And now, here to begin today's Global Home Business Pro Team Training Call is Russ DeVan.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Russ DeVan, and I am honored to be part of this call today. I was asked by a tremendous friend of mine and someone I've known for the better part of the last 16, 17 years, Mr. Cliff Walker, to share some information with you today that I hope you'll find empowering and useful. I do want to offer the disclaimer that what you're going to hear is based on my opinion. It doesn't mean that it should be treated as the absolute last word on anything or even the truth. It's just my personal experience and opinions of this incredible system of distribution that we know as network marketing and my thoughts on it. And my objective today is actually to maybe shake up the way you've thought about some things and point some things out to you, both as sponsors and as builders in this type of a business. And I hope that our time together you'll find useful. We've got about 45 minutes, I understand, so I guess it would be best if I got started. Now, I prefer not to do monologues, which today is going to come across as, so I hope it doesn't sound a little stiff. But you may know, or you may not, that today's theme is about the 3 areas where people, I think, struggle the most and even sometimes fall down and quit in the network marketing business. And insights into this particular venue or angle at network marketing can, I think, make you more equipped to have conversations about people that might resist network marketing, might help you get people over the hump that are in your organizations that are struggling. At any rate, that's my intention. Now, you're probably asking yourself, because you know absolutely nothing about me, why I think this way or how I came to think the way I do and build from this posture. To really understand that, we need to go back about 35 years, which started my, what I want to call kind of a love-hate romance with this system of distribution. And I was pretty much of a new and young person back then in business and considered myself pretty adept in the area of sales. But what I really longed to do was own my own business. And when I discovered, or when it discovered me, when network marketing came into my life, it was in what I would consider to be the golden age of network marketing, when companies were really setting the tone and really beginning. I mean, I don't believe that the company Amway was yet a billion-dollar company. And that wasn't my first network marketing experience. As a matter of fact, I haven't been an Amway distributor, but I certainly knew about Amway and had seen presentations before. But what happened was I decided that I was going to take the plunge and I was going to start in this business because a very enthusiastic new friend of mine had told me about this great opportunity. And when I had used the product that he was so excited about and believed in it very much, but had never quite ever seen anything like this system of distribution. And I took it on with so much enthusiasm. He had been in the business about, well, I'd say about 3 weeks longer than I had, so he was quite new. And when I asked him where I should go, like who I should talk to, the first thing he told me is talk to anybody, talk to friends, neighbors, relatives, anyone. And so with nothing but raw enthusiasm, very little product knowledge, but a lot of belief, I charged ahead and recruited about 28 people in 30 days into my business. By the end of the next 30 days, all but one had quit, and that was my brother, and he quit a few days later. And I learned quite early, I should say, that the raw enthusiasm that you have when you decide to take on an enterprise like this is a good thing, but it should be tempered. And what's probably more important is to begin to think about what you're building. Now, before I get to these three areas that I'm going to talk about, I'm going to talk about something else. And I want to talk about what I got confused very early about, which was what I should really try to be or do as a sponsor of someone, because that was an even bigger concern for me. I thought I'd probably be good at moving the product, which I kind of was, but really not that good. I certainly knew people that I could get into the business. I already proved that to myself very quickly, but I wasn't sure how I could help them. And I think there's a huge collapse in this type of a business about what a sponsor's job really is. And my thought on it was that a sponsor should, I looked around me and I saw these great speakers. I saw people that seemed to be very successful in the business and making money, and it occurred to me that they were great motivators. So I thought that my job should be to motivate people, to find people that want to do the business and then get them excited and keep them motivated. But I found very early on that, well, that was a lot like plate spinning. And by that I mean, I don't know if you remember the old carnivals and circus sideshows where they'd have entertainers that used to have these long poles, and they'd throw plates up at the top of them, and they'd make this motion with their hand, and they'd get plates spinning on a pole. And once they got one up, they'd get another one up and another one up. Pretty soon, they had 5 or 6 plates on poles all spinning. But the more plates they got up on poles, the faster they had to move from pole to pole to keep it cranking, to keep the plate up in the air. Well, that's a little how I think people act in this business. They get somebody in the business, and they work with them real hard, and they get them real excited, and then they put somebody else in the business, and they get them excited, and by the time they have 2 or 3 people in the business, they're moving and bouncing between all of them, trying to keep them in action. And those people are relying on that sponsor for their own motivation. Well, sooner or later, if you stop cranking, the plate stops spinning, and it's going to come down right on your head. So my suggestion is that this isn't about motivating people. As a matter of fact, I have been unable in the 35 years that I've known about and worked in this business, I've been unable to find a way that motivation could be sustained unless it was self-sourced. Meaning that if you are a person's motivation, then when you're not there, they're not motivated. So there's something more important to tap into, and I'll say more about that in a minute. The second thing that I got confused about was I thought if I was going to sponsor someone in this business, then, they should be successful at it, or it would be my fault. And I want to invite you to take a look at that too, because I think a lot of us have this expectation that we can make people successful if we work hard enough, if we maybe tell them all the right things to do. But I say that that's actually taking something away from people. First of all, people define success in a lot of different ways. Success isn't ours to give any more than it would be a company like Jeuness's responsibility to give it to us. You see, success is something that we have to define what it means for ourselves, and we have to be the one that puts the parameters on it. And then we have to be the ones that are responsible for it. Nobody, not our sponsor, not our company, no one outside of ourselves can be responsible for our success. So remember, if you try to be responsible for people's success in this business and you're not, then they will blame you for their failure, which is kind of putting the ball in the wrong court as well. And that's not where it belongs. Not that blame belongs anywhere. But what I'm saying is success has to be defined by the people that you enroll, and you support them in their success. So if success and motivation aren't a sponsor's responsibility, you might ask, well, what are? Now, after 10 years of building successful organizations and also having dramatic failure in this business, I came to a crossroads in about 1990. And I decided I was really going to explore and research what worked about network marketing for people, what didn't work for so many people, and what was missing. And I began to do research outside of myself, outside of my own organization, looking at companies that I knew that had successful distributors and had huge attrition, and what was working and what wasn't working. And in that research, I came to discover three things. And again, I just want to reemphasize that these are my opinions, but those three areas where I believe people struggle the most can be simply defined as, where do I go? Which is the question that your person you put in the business will ask you, and they're asking you, who do I talk to? Where do I go? What do I do? Is what actions do I take that are going to make this business experience productive? And how do I go about doing it? Which is the third piece. So I know that sounds, for now, a bit ambiguous. Where do I go? What do I do? And how do I do it? But to reframe it, it's more like this. The where do I go piece has to do with this huge question about prospecting. Where do people come from? You see, I don't believe that there's an inherent prejudice against the system of network marketing distribution itself, because I don't believe a great majority of the world even understand it or know about it. I believe that the prejudice comes from people not understanding it and thinking it's something else. And that starts with the prospecting conversation. In other words, people don't like to be thought of a certain way. Maybe they're uncomfortable with the idea of talking to friends, neighbors, and relatives. Maybe they will tell you they can't talk to strangers. And I'd like to point something out early on. And when I was exploring how network marketing prospecting was trained, what I found most often in the conversation was defining prospects as a warm and a cold market. And the warm market, obviously, is people you know, and the cold market is people you don't know. And the more I looked at that, the more I found the terrible inconsistency with it. In other words, I personally have come to the belief that whether you know someone or you don't know them isn't what makes them a prospect. So friends, neighbors, and relatives, it's thought, are the likely target because they're warm market. And strangers are cold, so it's hard for people to talk to strangers. And that's the logic. That's the thinking. And I say it's all nonsense. Somebody made up this thing about a warm and a cold market and defined it that way a long time ago. And people have been operating out of that box, out of that paradigm ever since. So how about this? What if it's not whether you know someone or don't know them that makes them a prospect? It's whether or not they're listening to you, whether or not you have something of value to share with them, whether or not they're suspicious of your motives for even talking to them. You know, the people that say that friends, neighbors, and relatives don't make good prospects, well, that's blown out of the water by people who wind up sponsoring their daughter or sponsoring their mother-in-law or their brother-in-law, and they happen to just tear the business up. But it's not that it was their brother-in-law. It's that their brother-in-law had a certain quality of being open and willing to listen and ambitious and courageous and good with people and all of those things. Not that it was their brother-in-law. So another way to look at that is people think, well, I don't like to talk to strangers. Well, that's nonsense too, because people talk to strangers all the time. It's that what they don't like is maybe talking to strangers with a hidden agenda and not letting the stranger know what you're up to. That's what people are afraid of. In other words, we can get in an elevator in a hotel and start visiting with the person without any problem whatsoever. We can stand in line at the cash register at a grocery store and see that somebody's buying the same thing we are and start a conversation with somebody we don't know. We can meet someone at a soccer match or a football game, and you know what? We don't even know them, but if we're rooting for the same team, by the time we leave that game, we've hugged each other and we've high-fived and done all that. So we don't have a problem talking to people we don't know. Now, when we get in this business, and the only time we talk to people we don't know is to see whether they're a prospect or not, but we don't want them to know we're in a new network marketing business, so we try to hide that and keep it a secret, it makes the conversation odd. It has a weird energy to it because people have the thinking, they can like smell the conversation coming a mile away. They have the thinking like, you're only talking to me because you want something. I can tell by the nature of this conversation. And that's what people don't want to be thought of as. That's what they don't want to do. And I understand it because that's completely uncomfortable. So before I get into a long thing on prospecting and some really good ideas around it, what I first want to say is the area that people are afraid of, maybe the most, even more than I think sales. It's this whole area of, well, I don't like that kind of business because I don't want to talk to people I know about it. Or I don't like that kind of business because I don't want to talk to people I don't know about it. Well, guess what? You just eliminated the world. People you know and people you don't know. There's prospects out there somewhere. All you have to do is look at all the successful distributors around you. So what is missing is being able to distinguish the qualities of a person that gets in and succeeds at this business. Okay? And that's something that can be taught. That's something that can be learned if people are open to it. But that's the first piece, is the where do I go piece. The second piece, I think people, and this is a general misconception, people will say, well, I don't like the selling part, or I don't like the recruiting part. And it's pretty clear that sales of the product need to be made if anybody's going to get paid. And it's also clear that people need to come into the business. But unfortunately, recruiting and sales, the way they're taught most of the time in this type of a business, even though they're tried and true sales methodologies, even though people might be excellent at convincing and therefore good recruiters, as a general rule, those are bankrupt because even if you're good at it, other people don't want to do it or can't be as good as you are at it. So that's kind of a paradox, isn't it? So we've learned ways to disguise what people do. In other words, I hear a lot of times, well, this isn't about selling, really. You don't have to be a salesperson. You know, just learn everything about the product and then share it. Well, most people share like selling in sheep's clothing. In other words, they share just as hard as they sell. So it doesn't feel any different. The other side is that it doesn't matter if people have sophisticated sales technique, because it's not how much you do or how much you sell that really counts in this type of a business. It's whether or not you can move the product, have other people try it, have other people love it and believe in it, and then share it with other people or have other people do the same thing. That's the key, not being a great or an effective salesperson. And it's kind of the same with recruiting, because in recruiting in our business, and this again is my opinion, I just want to offer that caveat. Recruiting in this business for most people looks like one of two things. It either looks like dragging, kicking, and screaming people into the business, or begging. And neither one of those is very appealing to people. People don't want to put the touch on friends, neighbors, and relatives, or even strangers for that matter. And they don't want to debase themselves by begging somebody to do something, even though some of us do. So there must be a better way. And the better way, it's incumbent upon you as a sponsor to find out. And I'll say more about that in a minute. But there is a better way. And the great news about the better way in terms of prospecting and selling and recruiting is that you already know it. You just have to remember it. It's not something you need to learn. It's something that when I tell you about it in another conversation, you will have already known it. Thus, you're already good at it, which means all you have to do is remember you're already good at something instead of learning something new how to do, like recruiting or sales technique. So that's the good news. The last piece where people stumble, and this is peculiar, I think, to our direct sales networking model of distribution, because if you take conventional businesses of any kind, whether it's manufacturing wholesale or retail stores or even building an insurance practice, whatever the business is, very few people approach a business without a plan to succeed. In other words, if you don't have a plan, then how will you know whether it's working or not? If you don't set up your expectations over a course of time, and that's what a plan is, it's a design, like if you go to a bank to borrow money to create and operate a business, which you don't have to in our kind of a business, which is kind of a bonus. But if you go to a bank and you say, I've got a great business idea, what are they going to want to see? They're going to want to see how you plan for that business to succeed, what your business plan is. Now, this is the only type of business that I know or can think of where people generally take it on because either they want to make money, and that's really what they're committed to, is they need more money and they want to make money, or they want to be financially free, and or they've tried a product and it's had such a life-changing effect on them that they can't imagine if they shared it with other people that they wouldn't love it too, and there must be an opportunity attached, but they'd share it even if they weren't paid. Those are the two general reasons, in my opinion, that people get into network marketing. Well, unfortunately, most people don't go beyond those two reasons. They join a company, like Jeunesse, for instance, and they start to study the products, or they start to study the compensation plan, and they begin to build the compensation plan based on the parameters of how you get paid and how many cycles you get and what the name of the position is. And there's nothing wrong with that. All I'm saying is, how about this? What if you knew what you were building first, like you first thought about what it was you were going to create? Because that's the wonderful gift of this type of business. You can create a global business dynasty that is yours, that you own. And you can utilize Jeunesse to do it because they've handled supplying the product, they've handled the compensation structure for how you can get paid for moving that product. They have all kinds of tools and great coaches and everything for you to tap into. So you've got a ready-made business, just add you. But what's missing is, what are you building? How does it include other people? That's what I would ask every person listening to this call, is have you asked yourself, what am I creating? How long will it take? And how does it include other people? How will they benefit by being part of what I'm building? And can I get just as interested in what they're building as I am what I'm building? Because what I'm building needs to include what they're building. Now, these three things, quite simply, are where do I go, what do I do, and how do I do it? And each piece has different components and dimensions to it. But as a sponsor, your job, if it's not success of others and it's not motivation, what is it? So I say a sponsor's responsibility looks like this. Although you're not responsible for how people motivate or how to motivate them, you are responsible for something. One thing I say that we're all responsible for is an example. And not just an example of one thing, actually an example of several things. Number one, we're an example of the product. In other words, there's no substitute for personal experience with a product. There's none. No amount of product knowledge, nothing substitutes the courage of conviction that comes with knowing the product you're offering people works. And that only works if you use it. I'm not saying you've got to use every product or all the products, but if you don't know the products work, how can you encourage people to not only promote them and use them, but to build a huge business around them? You don't. So the only place that comes from is there. So an example of the product working and the product being valid and viable and having a great value attached to it, that's our responsibility. And that's just part of it. If we want to talk about results from, using the weight management program, if we want to talk about results from using the skincare products, those are fine. And if we can show results with ourselves, that's fine. But most products are demonstrable. You can show that they work. But people can spot courage of conviction and belief anywhere. And in my opinion, it's the single most important factor in people buying a product is your belief in it. The second thing that we're an example for is how the business is done. In other words, the where do I go, what do I do, how do I do it part. We're responsible as instructors to help people determine what a prospect looks like and what prospecting in fact is and how to go about doing it. If we expect other people to find people for the business when we don't know how to do that ourselves, that's a problem. So we've got to be like ironclad in knowing how to create conversations for possibilities with prospects and then being able to teach other people to do the same thing. Just like the shortfalls of the business being perhaps, and I'm floating this out there, maybe the warm and the cold market direction isn't necessarily the best. I'm just, as I said, just mentioning that as a possibility. But if it's not, then where is? Where do prospects come from? So the where do I go piece is something that we have to handle for ourselves, and we need to be responsible for teaching other people those things. So first, it's an example of how the products work. Then comes the example of how the products are promoted. Then comes the example of how people are enrolled in the business. What is how people are enrolled? What does that look like? What does it sound like? Can we demonstrate enrollment of someone in the business for the people we put in the business? Because I say it's our responsibility to. Now, our responsibility is not how many they enroll or making them enroll anything. Our responsibility is showing them how the business works, okay, and being an example of how the products work and showing how the business works. So that's the first piece, example. The second piece of a sponsor's responsibility is direction. And by direction, I mean every new person in the business wants to know, where do I go? What do I do? How do I do it? So if we haven't handled those three things for ourselves, we can't very well show them where to go, what to do, and how to do it. And that gets back to the three things that I talked about. The prospecting conversation, the using the product conversation, the demonstrating how to promote the product effectively, demonstrating how to enroll people in the business. And then lastly, remember I mentioned a plan. Every business needs to have a plan. Now, how I've worked with that is when I enroll someone in the business, we have an agreement. And I don't put the agreement in writing. You can if you want to. But it's like an honor agreement. But what I will tell people is, unless you're prepared to take this on for a year, it's probably really not wise to do it. Because this isn't something you try for 30 days or 60 days or 90 days and see how it's doing. This is something that we're building together, and we're building with a long-term vision of a year or 2 years or 3 years. And we're talking about some very, very serious life-changing income over that course of time. But we're not going to get anywhere unless we have a plan to do it. So every journey begins with the first step, right? So on a journey of a year or longer, it has to start with the first month. And a business plan looks like a year-long objective and then taking it one bite at a time, 30 days at a time, with criteria of satisfaction, with achieving certain positions in the compensation plan, with certain levels of income. But here's the wonderful news. Because people don't plan that way, they don't know whether they're winning or not. And they could very well be on track, but because they don't know they're on track, they quit. For instance, one of the great phenomenons that I like to teach about our type of a business is there's funny math involved. And when I say funny math, this is what I'm talking about. In almost every business equation that involves a network marketing distribution compensation plan, and Jeunesse is no exception, the half of a number doesn't really work that way. In other words, if your objective was to earn $10,000 in a month, then outside in the other world, in the other types of businesses, you'd be halfway to $10,000 a month if you earn $5,000 a month. That just makes simple math sense. But that's not how it works in this business. It doesn't work that way because it doesn't factor geometric progression. And earning $2,000 in residual income a month, I say, in this type of a business, is the key to earning 10. Now, that might sound strange, because it might take you 6 months to earn $2,000 a month. But here's the key. If you do it and you build it with a plan, and you enroll a team of people in the business, and because of that team of, let's say, 5 or 6 people, you get to $2,000 in residual income in 6 months, then you know exactly all the distinctions and what precisely it took to reach $2,000 a month. And you have 6 people that you've enrolled in the business that are somewhere between 0 and where you are at $2,000 a month, unless they've passed you already. But they're somewhere along that path. So all there is to do is show them how to do what you did the last 6 months over the course of the next 6 months, and get them focused on them getting the $2,000 in residual income a month. And I've never seen in 35 years a structure in our business where you could do that and not make $10,000 a month or more. So half of 10 is 2. Half of 20 is 5. Half of 50 is 10. You see how that works? Because we get residual income by building a team and teaching them how to build a team. That's how you do it. And to tell you the truth, it's a much more fun, in my opinion, and much easier way to do it than trying to do it all by ourselves, which we really can't do it. And if you're doing it all by yourselves, you're doing it wrong in this type of a system. So we've talked about a couple things. We've talked about the 3 areas where people struggle the most. These are areas that you need to find solutions to as a distributor and as a sponsor. But remember, the solutions can't just work for you. The solutions need to work for anyone you put in the business. It's not enough to say, oh, well, I've got this huge contact list and they're mine, now you build yours. That isn't really empowering for someone you put in the business. Now, if you can create a contact list and show them how to do the same thing, and in your contact list isn't 100 people you put in the business, I also have some strong feelings about that. I feel that in our business, less is more. If you build an organization where you sponsor 100 people in this business over the course of the next year, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that 85% of your organization will come from 5 of them or 6 of them. So why not get those 5 or 6 first? It might take you a little longer. You might make yourself feel good by recruiting more people. But if you're recruiting people quickly and they just quit, that's kind of like throwing it up against the wall to see if it sticks. Now, some people will tell me I'm crazy. Some people will say you have to go through 35 people to find the right one. I say that's nonsense. If you take a deck of cards, there's 52 cards in a deck, but there's only 4 aces. You don't know where those aces are. Maybe you have to go through all 52 cards, but you might get 4 aces in the first 5 if you know what an ace looks like. So my point is, I don't believe that a lot of what's taught, I don't believe a lot of what's said is really so. And of course, it depends on the individual. But remember, if you can understand the where do I go, what do I do, how do I do it, if you can prospect yourself and create an unlimited resource of prospects, which I can help you do if next time we have more time, or you can make it easy for people to promote, enroll, and consume the product. Those are the 3 things that people need to do. They don't need to do a lot of it, but they need to promote the product, they need to enroll people in the business, and they need to consume the product. And if they do that, and they teach other people how to do that in a little action every month, something that anybody could do, even if they're working somewhere else, well, now you've really got something, because you've got what I call a duplicatable effort. And part of your responsibility as a sponsor is establishing that duplicatable effort for the people you put in the business. And the third piece is the how do I do it piece, which is not only helping people create their plan, determining what they're building and how it includes or who it includes, but also designing it and then supporting them in it. Support is a funny word. I say that's the third leg of the table of a sponsor's responsibility. The first is example, the second is direction, and the third is support. But what most of us think support is in this type of a business is hand-holding or babysitting, or gets back to begging and dragging and kicking and screaming. No, that's not support. Support isn't calling people because you want to find out what they've done for you this month. Support is being available. Support is being interested. Supporting is having people be accountable, not to you, to themselves. Let me tell you a little secret. I'm going to say something that's probably going to make me very unpopular. But I've heard this said time and time again. It's a question of how bad you want it. Well, I want to take issue with that. I say wanting it's got nothing to do with it. You can want as hard as you want to. You can go out on a riverbank tonight and scream up at the moon how bad you want to make money. I guarantee you the moon doesn't care. People that stand in lottery lines, they all want to be rich, but none of them are getting any closer to it. People's wanters work just fine. It's their getters that are broken. And I think a very important distinction comes between what you want and what you're committed to. And you're always committed to something. Think about it. Every time you've desired something in your life, there's been things that you wanted and you let go because maybe you told yourself you didn't really want them badly enough. But there were other things that you had to have. you were committed to. A lot of times that's true in a marriage. Like, we find somebody, we fall in love, and we think they're out of our league. But it's out of our commitment that those people become our spouse. It's out of our commitment that things happen. The world moves for what we're committed to. And that's an important distinction, because it doesn't matter how bad people tell you they want something. When you're committed to something, you're willing to sacrifice. When you're committed to something, there isn't a maybe or a I've got another reason or this happened. There's nothing but being committed to something. There's a funny expression around that I remember. I always thought it was kind of amusing. It says that the chicken wants an egg, but the pig is committed to the bacon, if you get my drift. So being committed to something and wanting something is a huge, huge distinction. Okay, we're almost out of time. So again, I'm going to recap. The most important 3 areas in network marketing to become powerful in, adept in, study, learn more about, do, be, whatever you want there, is the area of knowing where to go, what to do, and how to do it. The where to go piece is solving the prospecting issue, not just for yourself, but so that it isn't an issue for anyone you're talking to about the business. Because I guarantee you, when you say network marketing, that's the thing that most people are most afraid of, is who they'll be talking to and how on earth are they going to have them be interested. Number 2, the what do I do part. That has to do with understanding that it's not sales and selling or being good at selling or sales or recruiting that makes you powerful. In this business, it's being able to communicate the value of the product powerfully so that people want and buy it and want to try it. It's being able to communicate a vision, a value, a direction, a responsibility in such a compelling way, it's irresistible. That's when people enroll. And it's being able to provide a plan, help people co-create a plan for how to get what it is they're committed to. And taking the promoting and enrolling part and making it, while combining it with consumption, into what I call a duplicatable effort. Those are the 3 areas where people struggle the most. And as a coach and as a distributor, you've got to become most powerful in. And then, again, to top it off, what I would say is, remember that your responsibility as a sponsor is not motivating people. It's not providing them with success. Your responsibility as a sponsor is finding out what it is people are committed to. Finding out how you can be a part of what they want to build and how it includes other people. Being an example of that the products work and how the products work. Being able to demonstrate how the product is effectively promoted and sampled and demonstrated. Being an example of how people are attracted to and enrolled in the business. Being available. Being a coach, a friend, a go-to person. Somebody who gets answers for them. Somebody who can hear their concerns. Hear their concerns. It's all right for people to have complaints and concerns. Part of your job as a sponsor is listening to what those concerns are and supporting them through it, and them knowing you're there. And I say that part of your responsibility as a sponsor is not letting people cheat on themselves. Not letting people say, okay, I'll give this 30 days to see what happens. No. Give it a year. Commit to that. And if you don't like what we build after a year, then you can fire me. Try that one on for size. So we're out of time. I think we've come jam up against our 45 minutes here. And I want to thank you for the great honor that it's been to spend this time with you. I hope some of the things I've touched on have been valuable. I can't wait to speak with you again. maybe expand on some of these things and expound on what promoting and enrolling are, or how to create an unlimited resource of prospects, or even how to create and build a powerful project. I love all those areas, and unfortunately all of them take time. So I hope I've piqued your interest today. I hope I've made a difference for you, and I hope I've maybe shaken up the way you thought about some things, because that was my intention. On behalf of my dear friend Cliff, Jeunesse is a wonderful, wonderful company. I'm thrilled to be a part of it. And of all the leaders in this company worldwide and the people that are listening and participating on this call, I want to thank you. God bless, and good afternoon.